Walter Sorrell's back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, the ultimate secret to shaving sharp blades. So I'm going to kind of kill two birds with one stone here. Today, we're talking about the secret to shaving sharp edges. It's this right here. Yeah, this just looks like a piece of scrap leather, right? And that is all that it is. But in the knife world, we don't call that scrap leather, we call it a strop. If you ever watch old movies, you got the barber with the straight razor, and before he shaves Clint Eastwood's beard, he goes zit, zit, zit on this little piece of leather. Now that piece of leather is a strop, and it's the secret to shaving sharp cutting edges. So the idea of the strop is just that you're kind of polishing the cutting edge of the knife, giving it a very smooth, very, very sharp edge, if you do it right. Now the key point to stropping, and this is really the key point with all sharpening, is to maintain a consistent angle with your knife blade against whatever surface that you're using to sharpen that edge. Now, if you practice with a stone, you can do it by hand without any jigs or gizmos to help you out. But it does take practice. So, what if you don't want to spend that time, whatever time it's going to take you to get good at sharpening? Is there a way? Absolutely. Now, I said it'd be killing two birds with one stone, so here's the deal. A couple months ago, I talked to the guys at Hapstone, makers of a pretty cool sharpening system that I reviewed several years ago. Link in the cards and description, by the way. Anyway, they said they wanted to send me a few accessories, and I said what I really wanted was their stropping tool, which I did not get with the original kit. Well, they sent me the stropping attachment and a bunch of other stuff. So my main focus here is the stropping, but along the way I'll mention a few of the other things they included. By the way, I got all this stuff for free, so, take that with whatever grain of salt you need to. But first, let's back up and talk about the basics of sharpening. Now, doesn't matter if you use a belt grinder, a bench grinder, a Tormex system, a manual sharpening system like the Hapstone that I'm showing here, and there are a bunch of similar brands that, do kind of the same thing as the Hapstone. Or if you're using an Arkansas stone or a Japanese water stone or a piece of sandpaper taped to a piece of masonite, a diamond stone, a rock you picked up off the floor of the jungle, it does not matter. The principle is always going to be the same. You start with your heaviest grit abrasive, and then you scrub the knife back and forth at a very, very consistent angle. And then you work your way up to finer and finer grit abrasives. If you've got an old-fashioned Arkansas stone, then maybe it's just 2 grits. If you have something like we're going to show today, it might be a whole wide range of grits. But the principle's the same no matter what. Work your way from heavy to fine. Let's demonstrate on the Hapstone. What's cool about the Hapstone is that it's specifically made so that you can use an electronic angle finder to set your edge really precisely. Anton at Hapstone sent me a new precision angle setter. I removed the original post, which works fine by the way, and replaced it with this new one, which just allows you to set the angle a little bit more repeatably and accurately. After setting the angle at about 20 degrees, I'll run a Sharpie along the edge. Then I just adjust the angle and take a few little test strokes until the abrasive is perfectly wiping out the Sharpie. That shows me that I'm sharpening at exactly the same angle as I did before, saving me some wasted effort. Then I'll just repeat the same little exercise, running up through the various grits until I reach 5,000 grit. You could stop before that, but this will get it sharpest. I'm using a lubricating oil they sent, but you can run it dry too. Let me pause for a quick note here. If you like the tips, the gear reviews, the builds, all the stuff that we do on the channel and have been doing for a long, long time, and you want to help out, you can do it on Patreon. All my Patreon supporters get access to my full library of plans for dozens of knife builds that I've done over the years, and for some pretty cool tools on top of that. So help me help you. Patreon.com/Walter Sorrells. All right, back to it. Now, here's where the magic happens. See, when you get to the final abrasive, you'll almost always have a small piece of metal running right down the edge, and this is called a wire edge. Now, that wire edge impedes cutting, and it'll cause the edge to roll over, so you want to get rid of it. So the strop will do two things. It'll polish the cutting edge, and it'll also remove the wire edge and produce a nice clean edge that really cuts and stays sharp for a reasonable amount of time. Now, one thing I like to do is to strop at a slightly steeper angle than the sharpening angle I've used before, maybe half a degree. This helps compensate for the softness of the strop, which, because it's sort of mushing in there on the cutting edge, which actually distorts that stropping angle a little. This is where the precision adjustment attachment is great. You can back it off about half a turn and it'll be right where you want it, just a little steeper. Now, you always want to charge the leather with a stropping compound. Many ways to do this, many types of compounds, but they all do the same thing. They're very fine abrasives that kind of embed themselves in the leather. In this case, I'm using a spray-on diamond compound supplied by Hapstone, but Jeweler's Rouge and other compounds work just fine too. Key point of stropping. Unlike the sharpening phase, which is generally done away from the cutting edge, stropping is always done toward the cutting edge, so you're pulling instead of pushing it. So what I'm doing here is single strokes. I lift it, I drag, lift, drag, up, lift, drag, over and over again. If you go the other way, pushing it into the knife, you're going to slice into the leather, it's going to hang up, and it just won't work. The way I like to do it is I do a bunch of strokes on one side, kind of get it polished on one side, then I'll do a whole bunch of strokes on the other side, get that one pretty polished, and then I'll do another pass on each side with fewer strokes, and then a very light pass, basically just one set down the length of the blade on each side, and that's how I finish it. That really tunes up that edge. Look, shaving sharp. So one thing about Hapstone and other similar sharpeners is that they are not cheap. They work amazingly well, but they will set you back quite a few shekels. There's a link in the description where you can look into all that, but that's just an introduction to say that there are other ways to skin this cat, some of them much cheaper. Here, for instance, is a super simple strop. You can buy these at places like Pop's Knife Supply, but of course you can just make one by gluing a piece of sole leather to a board, which is about as easy a homemade tool as you could possibly make. The principle here is exactly the same as with the Hapstone, though. You're just keeping that consistent angle and you're going sweep, sweep, sweep up the strop. The big mistake that you can make here is rolling the edge, which is actually, if you watch the old movies, that's kind of what they do, and that's what you want to avoid. If you change that angle each time you move up and down the strop, you're going to actually dull the edge instead of sharpening it. So avoid that mistake and everything will work fine. And there it is, shaving sharp totally by hand. What about if you want to go a little faster? With my production knives, I sharpen on a belt grinder, go up through a couple of different grits, and then I finish up using a stropping belt. I grind toward the blade with abrasive belts, then, and this is important, then I flip it over and strop with the edge down. Extremely important safety point with stropping belts. If you mistakenly strop with the edge going into the belt is going to grab that knife and chunk it with potentially fatal results. So every time you use a stropping belt, always make sure you're going in the right direction, stropping away from the spine. So there it is, a gleaming, polished, shaving sharp edge. So now you know the secret. Now, by the way, the knife that I showed you, right here, this knife that I'm actually holding in my hand is one of my Eclipse models. Now, as it happens, this is literally the only knife that I've made with this particular little handle design. I was testing it out and ended up using a different design for this, but it's a pretty cool little design. Anyway, if you'd like to pick up this actual one-of-a-kind knife, the one I've got right here, link in the cards and description. I really like these Eclipses. I carried one for quite a while myself, and it's a cool keepsake of this particular video. So if you do decide you want to pick it up, I recommend doing it quickly because these video knives tend to go pretty quick. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and keep on making those knives, and keep on making them sharp. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. You know, I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. WalterSorrellsBlades.com.